Today on the Viral Report, we're talking police officers shooting down black women and black men. Why is this? Well, we got the answer for you. Let's go!
What happened to me from some of our sick white brothers? Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now, because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Viral Report. I'm Lamar. Alright, so let's get into this thing. So right now, America has two huge problems. One being the economy and the other one being white domestic terrorists hiding in plain sight behind police badges, money, different levels of government, and in union leadership positions. African Americans are on edge and almost to a boiling point as more and more cases of police officers murdering or brutally beating African Americans goes viral. We've all seen the disturbing footage of Ahmaud Arbery, who was just out for a jog when he was hunted and shot down like a wild animal with a shotgun. Now in the white community, this is a chart right here that you go by when you're wanting to use your gun for something, okay? It's the reason you see all these white people out protesting with high-powered weapons. The reason those individuals are carried off to jail is because it shows other white people that, you know, these white people are just friendly and just harmless, and they're just exercising their First and Second Amendment rights. However, if you're an African American, you don't seem to have these same rights, and we'll get to those reasons in a bit. So in regards to Ahmaud's murder, we already see certain white Americans pulling their money together behind the scenes to hire two high-powered, expensive attorneys for these dudes, okay? Remember, Ahmaud's killers aren't wealthy. They're just small town community trash who happen to have a former connection to law enforcement. Who knows how deep their connection actually goes? And the father was already seen taking pictures with the governor. That tells you right there. So it'd be interesting to see how all that plays out. Now we also have Breonna Taylor, who was just minding her own business in the comfort of her own home when three police officers charged into her home after arriving in unmarked cars, plain clothes, and no required body cams. Breonna's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, thought someone was breaking in, and he did what any of us would do. He started firing off shots. Now the police officers returned fire, striking Breonna 8 times while firing off a total of 20 rounds. After killing Breonna, the police then learned that they had the wrong apartment and the criminal that they were looking for was already in custody. Now they ended up hauling the boyfriend off to jail, charging him with attempted murder after one of the bullets grazed an officer. No apology was issued to the boyfriend or the family of Breonna. They chalked it up as, you know, business as usual. This all took place in Louisville, Kentucky on March 13th. I mean, just crazy. So we'll see how this all plays out. I think people need to come together and raise a GoFundMe if one has not already been, you know, established for the boyfriend, because this is just crazy. He needs a high-powered attorney. So where are all these black criminal defense attorneys out here that can actually take on the case? And in situations like this, where are the gang members? Because they're silent right now. Now, for the most popular question on everyone's mind is, why are we still dealing with this in 2020? Well, hopefully that's why you clicked on this video, because we're about to learn the answer. And the answer to that burning question is history, okay? History is always deemed to repeat itself if it goes unchecked, okay? Violence against blacks are baked into our laws, both old and new. The fact that you can't beat your child, but the police can beat your child, is just nuts, you know? And I can break this all down for you, but, you know, I wanted to share my favorite author, historian, among other titles, Dr. Claud Anderson, okay? He thinks like me, and he's sharp as a blade. Nowadays, Dr. Claud Anderson can be found on Dr. Boris Watkins' YouTube channel, and they recently just had a really great discussion. Doc was dropping some gems and speaking the truth as always, and he had some things to say about the Obamas that I think most of you all would probably agree with. Alright, now the information was so yummy, I thought I'd share a snippet of Dr. Claud Anderson's interview with Dr. Boris Watkins. Take a look at what Dr. Anderson had to say, and I'll be right back.
You recited the Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which says the Second Amendment to the Constitution says it was related to gun control and gun requirements. That goes back to slavery. But nobody ever connects the dots between the Second Amendment and the Constitution and black folk being shot. That is historical. And what the Constitution did, it authorized. Not only did it authorize, it demanded. It demanded that every white person between the ages of 18, every white male between the ages of 18 and 45 be armed, A-R-M-E-D, be armed at all times to be able to accost, approach, check, monitor any black person they caught on the street or off the street at any particular time, 24 hours a day. That is in the Constitution. And everybody always talk about more gun control. And they ignore that fact. And that's why all those young men and his father was chasing that black man, because you have approximately about, excuse me, you got about approximately maybe 370 million firearms in the United States on the streets, 360 or 70 million guns out there. And guess what? 99.something% of them all owned by whites. Because the whites were required by the law in the 13th and the Second Constitution to be able that everybody between 18 and 45 had to join a militia, a white militia, to be able to watch out for what reason? To protect white persons and protect white property. Whites owned all the property, and they were scared of black people rising up, and so they called them patty rollers. They had to walk the streets on a regular basis, and they joined the militias to make sure they sell any black, to stop him at any time and ask him for proper credentials. Why is he on the street? Why is he on the road? Where is he going? What is he up to? Why aren't you on the plantation? Why aren't you out there picking cotton? And that's where all that comes from. And that's been on the records now for 370-something years, going on 400 years. And no one talks about gun. When they talk about gun control, they miss the fact that all the weapons are owned basically by whites. And then most of the incidents and shootings occur by white males in that age range of 18 to 45, shooting blacks. And they ignore the fact that nobody is shooting whites. Nobody. You just asked about whites. Nobody's shooting into whites. You've not heard about anybody that's shooting whites down. You haven't heard about anybody shooting down white women. You haven't heard about anybody shooting down Jews. You haven't heard anybody shooting down Arabs. You haven't heard anybody shooting down American Indians. You haven't heard anybody shooting down Hispanics. They only do it to black folk because of the Constitution stipulates that they're authorized to be able to carry the weapons and to be able to use it anytime they think they want to. They got a new justification which says that you don't have to wait to actually find a black guilty of something. Is that if you see him, you can shoot him on that basis, be quiet, because you feel offended by his skin color. You feel threatened by his skin color. And therefore you got a legitimate ground to stand your ground and shoot and kill him. And that's been going on for the longest. And black folk had never pushed back, because they don't have any leadership. They have no leadership organizations in America. They don't have not one black organization in America that pushes it back against this stuff. What they got is a front, a fake out called NAACP and Urban League. Those are the two most useless organizations in the history of the world. All they do is front, pretend that somehow they're gonna look out for black folk. We gotta look out for everybody. We gotta look out for gays, midgets, humpback, one-eyed, peg leg, anybody. And because they are subsidized by white corporations, and they haven't got the backbone or the gall or the fortitude to stick up for black folk. And worse than that, you have no black leadership in America. I cannot think of maybe one or two exceptions of any black person in America right now that stands up strictly and solely for black folk. I guess with the exception of myself, and see, I'm just about dumb enough to keep doing it myself, to look out for them. Nobody's fixed up for black folk. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to say, now, once we shoot down this black, just like every 4 or 5 months, we're going to shoot down a black. We know what those black folk are going to do. All they're going to do is have a march. They're going to call some visible black, and the visible black means those blacks who are in the black overclass. We'll call 1 or 2 of those to come out, and what they'll do, they'll talk about how bad it is. Not that you just shot a black man, but that you shot a minority, or a poor person, or a person of color, or a diversity person, and therefore we need to have a march. And you see, if white folk know that routine down pat. It's been going on now for 300, almost 400 years. Have a march, and a march has never accomplished a damn thing for black folk. That's not what. And see, they go back to the stuff of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King's thing somehow, because they've been misled and faked out, believing that somehow if they march, that's going to bring change. Ain't never brought about any change. Only the change came about was when black folk hit the street and started saying, we're going to burn and do this and that. We're going to practice quid pro quo. If you hit me, we're going to hit you back. You send me to the hospital, I'm going to send you to the morgue. See, that's what they're scared of. But see, they can't practice that because black folk don't produce any weapons. They don't manufacture any weapons. They don't manufacture any bullets. They don't have any gun ranges. They don't have any gun shops. They're totally unable to protect themselves. That goes back to the original intent of that 13th Amendment. That Second Amendment in the Constitution, which says keep them powerless, keep them unarmed. That's why it started in about 1643. They passed laws saying that no black person can walk around with a weapon. You can't carry weapons. No tools, no mirrors, no knife, no hatchets, no axe, nothing. You have to be totally disarmed. So if we attack you or grab you or stop you or start shooting at you, you cannot respond appropriately. That's why that young man got killed, because nobody's questioning what's going on. You have no leadership organizations. Blacks are not armed, they cannot be armed, cannot prepare to defend themselves. And that's why white folk had a basic philosophy. In conclusion, to answer your question, whites understand that black folk are powerless people, they're weak people, but more importantly, he says that they are harmless and they never take up arms to do anything against whites. In response to what whites do to them, they are the most patriotic people in the country, would never take up arms. All they do is take a licking and keep on ticking. That's it. And black, it's no accident that you're the most hated, despised people in this country and on the earth. Black folk haven't understood that yet. It's hard to get through their skull that nobody gives a damn about black folk. They see you as a weak people, period. That's why you're carrying 6 to 8 times your fair share of everything is bad, and 6 to 8 times everything's bad that comes down the road is going to stop at your front door, at a black person's front door. Not at a white person's front door, it's your door. Because you're weak and you're hated and you're despised. You have no friends and no in this country. You never have had any major friends. You had 1 or 2 whites in the society from the history you're making in this country to where you are now that took up for black folk. One was John Brown as an example. Nobody ever takes up for black folk. Started talking about what Martin Luther King. If Martin Luther King was so great, where are the white Martin Luther Kings? Where are the Indian Martin Luther Kings? Where are the Arab Martin Luther Kings in this country? Where are the Hispanic Martin Luther Kings in this country? Why is it you only have one black man who was Martin Luther King that stood up and all about, everybody talks about what a great man he was. If he was so damn great, where are the whites great? Where are they hiding? They're behind the bushes. Nobody cares about black folk. And white folk, as I said a few seconds ago, see you as being very weak, spineless people. And see, because you don't have a code of conduct, you don't stand up. That's why Michelle Obama's not gonna stand up for black folk. Her husband didn't stand up for black folk. He didn't abide by a code of conduct. A code of conduct white folk would respect. It says, if you hit me, I'm gonna hit you back. You mistreat me, I'm gonna mistreat you back. You hate me, I'm gonna hate you back. See, black folk always looking for love in the wrong places. They always want to love people and try to get along. That's why Michelle Obama would go out and talk about issues on some kind of documentary talking about women. Women are not the issue. Gender is not the issue. Trying to compare gender with race is like trying to compare a headache with cancer. There's a difference. Yes, women might have their little minor problems because of gender. That has nothing to do with racism. But all these black people supposed to be leaders, whether in the White House or with the White House, they don't do a damn thing to help black folk because they have no backbone. And white folks say, you got no code of conduct, we don't respect you. We respect Indians who we came in and dominated and took the land from because they stood up. Indians would at least fight back. We tried to enslave a few Indians initially we came into the country. Indians said, we ain't gonna take that. We'll fight back. You take our people and kidnap them, try to enslave them, we'll come get them at night. Nobody ever came to this country to get black folk. After 360 years of being enslaved, not one ship left Africa coming to America to get black folk back. And even when slavery ended, you had 5 million black folks still enslaved. And not one ship came from Africa to get them back. Nobody stood up and tried to fight for black folk. And that's why, as I said, my mission on this earth is to stick up for the most hated, despised people on earth. The group that every gender, every ethnicity, every race, everybody has hated and mistreated and urinated on. Everybody's mistreated black folk. And you got all these profiling blacks with visibility always going to come out and pick some generic issue. We got to look out for minorities. Have you ever heard one of them? You tell me right now, and I'm quitting now. You tell me one instance where you heard a visible black in America come out and says, when they start talking about minorities, you say, what about the original minority? Up to the end of slavery, you only had one minority. That was black people. Indians got out of the bag of being a minority. They were christened to be whites. They were accepted to be whites in the 1800s. The only minority you had was black people, period. They are the original minority. So when you use the word minority, you also be these blacks in your audience. Right, I want them to take note of this. And so they can call in on any radio station, TV station. Look, whenever you use that word minority, do not include black folk unless you put an adjective in front of it, saying the original minority. If you're going to do something for minorities, you do it first for the original minority in order of priority and history. Original minority. And you don't put black folk in this thing of people of color. You had Obama sitting up in the White House now with Attorney General Holder. And they talk about people of color. And when the Attorney General back in 1862, when they started giving up free land to everybody, and blacks was going to be getting some land, guess what? The Attorney General, back the one that said, white Attorney General said, black people do not qualify to be classified as people of color. That's the Attorney General. Now, Michelle Obama, why didn't Eric Holder with her husband say, now that he's the Attorney General, why didn't he come out and say black folk are entitled to reparations? Black folk are entitled to affirmative action. Black folk are entitled to set-asides. They ought to be a unique minority that must be rectified. This is the year of reckoning on accountability in this country for race matters. This is a year of a reckoning. If black folk don't come out now and say, hey, nobody's to be compared to black folk, there is no, listen now, Dr. Watkins, there is absolutely no constitutional ground for anybody to be subordinating blacks to gender, to ethnicity, to immigration, to being bullied, to women, to gays, or anybody else. Those groups have no constitutional grounds to be equated, to be made equal to black folk, to be made equal, or worst of all, to get ahead of black folk. Black folks stand alone. They're the only group, only original minority in this country that has a constitutional ground to being honored, respected, and appreciated. But what whites have been doing all these years is humiliating them and shooting them and killing them down because they have no leadership and no leadership organization, and there's no connection between putting a black person in office and black folk getting benefit and recognition, respect, and appreciation for their history in this country. They won't do it. I don't give a damn you're the wife of the ex-president. Nobody stands up for black folk. I stand up for them because I love them and I appreciate them, and I'm never letting anybody disrespect black folk in my presence or in my absence, either one, if I can help it.
All right, so y'all just heard that awesomeness that Dr. Claud Anderson just gave us. And some of you all may or may not agree with what I'm about to say. I really don't care. But I also think people often treat blacks horribly because we call ourselves black. I've always said we should get away from the name and use African American instead, because to me, black has no lineage. Where does black traces back to? Nowhere. To me, African American feels right because if you're a descendant of slaves in America, your lineage traces back to Africa. But most black Americans don't want to have that conversation. In America, it's easier to beat, murder, and suppress a black person because they view you as a nigger. Other races may invite you to meet their friends and family if they view you as an African American, but one usually doesn't invite a person who they see as black to meet their inner circle because black is tied to nigger. This may sound strange to some of you all, but I'm telling you all from a psychological standpoint, it's true. The same holds true in the hood. A black person can kill another black person with ease because he sees you as a nigger. So we should definitely eradicate select words from our vocabulary and out of our communities, okay? Or neighborhoods. Like I said, this may sound crazy because the word black separates you from being an American and keeps you seen as property, trash, and something less than an animal. Alright, so that's just my opinion around the word black. Be proud of your African roots. I've definitely traced my roots, and they surely go back to the homeland. This isn't one of those crunch mouth woke channels, but we're definitely alive and intelligent over here on the Viral Report, okay? Hey, so this is the part of the video where I want to know, what do you think? What do you think about what Dr. Claud Anderson had to say about white people, guns, and the Constitution? Do you agree that more African Americans should arm themselves? I mean, I have noticed that, these gun shops, they set their prices high as hell. Is that to avoid black people from running in and buying up guns? I mean, how many poor people likely have $300 or more ready to throw to a gun purchase? Not many. It just may be cheaper to buy the damn thing off the street. And lastly, do you agree with my viewpoint around us needing to stop calling ourselves niggers and black? Instead, use the term African American to describe ourselves? Or do you think that it's fine because it's all the same damn thing and I'm tripping? Let me know down in the comment section below. I love you for watching. Peace.
White power structure to slow down that struggle for freedom and human dignity uses tricks. 100 years ago they could do it with chains. Today they use tricks, and one of the tricks that they've invented is this token integration, to get Negro, so-called Negro leaders to accept a few token crumbs of integration that don't solve any problem for the masses of black people in this country whatsoever, but it does make the hand-picked Negroes be satisfied to slow down the cry of the masses. And a good example of that is, as soon as the spirit of rebellion or revolution began to spread among the masses of black people in this country, and they began to take an active part, and they showed that they weren't confined to this nonviolent approach, then the government or the power structure began to sit up and take notice. And now, as you said earlier, the president is talking about new legislation and to take it out of the streets and put it back in the courts. Why, as long as it's in the streets, it's in the hands of the masses of black people who will not compromise or who cannot be bought out. But when you put it back in the courts, then that puts it back into the hands of the hand-picked Negro leaders, who will allow the judges and the other persons that are involved in this white power structure to slow them down. It's only a trick. And as long as the masses of black people are involved in the struggle for freedom, not integration, but freedom, respect as human beings, respect as men, and show that they're willing to die to be respected as men, then the power structure sits up and takes notice. But as long as this mass element is led, and when I say led, I use led in quotes, actually contained by Uncle Tom Negro leaders who hold them back, who tell them turn the other cheek, and things like that, then the white power structure isn't worried at all. They're only worried when they know that the masses of black people are ready to explode, and in exploding it will destroy some of the furniture in their house, and then they react accordingly.
The Viral Report. You
Pop these niggas like
who the
you're so evil.
Quit playing. I didn't do this.
man, we about to get this party started. If you made it this far in the video, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe, like, and that notification bell. It ain't a party until you subscribe. I love you for watching, and I'll see that beautiful face in the next one.